My name is Ian and welcome to Planted. I'm on a mission to share my plant knowledge with you so that you can have more success in your own yard. In this episode I look at saving precious plants that if left outside would die because of the frost. In particular, I'm talking about a ginger. It's called Hedychium. It's exotic, it's fragrant, it's tropical, it's very special. So by digging it up now and saving it, you'll have it ready for next year. Let me show you how. So I'm a big fan of saving plants. I like the discipline of rescuing them in the fall, keeping them alive in the winter, and then having the choice to plant them out next year. Now, maybe you've got some choice plants that you want to save, and previously they haven't done so good for you, but this year they've been very, very successful. So you think that you should save everything. If you've got 4 or 5 plants that have done well, and each of those could be divided into another 4 or 5 plants, before you know it, you've got the best part of 25 plants that you want to save. Well, not so fast. I think that you should save a big substantial clump, and that gets preferential treatment. And then I think you should kind of work down in an A, B, C mentality. A is the one that will live and will get you through and will survive next year. Take care of that first. And then you take a couple of Bs that are good but not ideal, and then you pull some Cs together, and they can become gifts to friends and family. You don't want to make all of them A's, and you don't want to save a huge clump of any perennial plant. It just gets too big and too heavy. So I've got one clump that I'm looking for, one big clump, and I'll cut back until I get that ideal size, and then I will save the rest of the plants around the edge and put those into a large pot. Let me show you how it works. So this is one of my absolutely most favorite plants. It's Hedychium. It's a ginger. It's a tropical plant. It needs protection in the winter, as do the majority of my plants. And as you see here, the plant is collapsed. The wind has shaken it around, but there's still flowers on it. The smell is breathtaking. People come around and smell this and can't quite make out where it's coming from. But this is a plant to absolutely savor. Now here we are in early part of November, haven't yet had a real frost, and the temptation is let it go, let it grow, and it'll be just fine. But one morning you'll wake up and it'll be too late. It will get zapped and it'll get knocked back. Probably won't die, but I don't think there's any reason to give it any risk of deteriorating in the winter because it got frosted unnecessarily. So you've got all this green growth. It put on, that's 6 feet of growth, and that flower bud didn't, well, it did flower, but it's still got more to go. This one here, I'm going to just butcher it. You can see that flower didn't even open. So it's a late bloomer, but one really worth having. If you've got a plant that you want to save, the temptation is to try and save all this growth. Well, I'm going to recommend that you don't do that. This is what I do. Now, with any plant that you want to save, I really recommend, in this situation, with it being a tropical plant, my number one goal is to get it to go through the winter. I don't really care what it looks like. I just want it to be healthy and vibrant next year. So by cutting back the branches like I did, I removed 75% plus off the plant. I can now see what I've got to dig up and save. And what I'm looking for is a grade A large clump. That's my number one goal. And then the chances are that there'll be some little offshoots that I can pot on and start some new plants to give away to friends or use to trade with. So just saving the whole thing in one big clump isn't going to be very practical because it will get too big. But I want to save the perfect piece for next year. So here's our plant, and we've got a nice big root system over here, and then all the way back towards me there's a long shoot with lots of branches coming off, and there's a big chunk at the back. So I think the chances are that we've probably got 3 plants here, and let's take a closer look. Now what we've got is the plant starts over here, and then there'll be an underground root that comes all the way back into the center of the plant. So this will probably become an extra plant. And the same over there. We've got, that's the end of a shoot, and it comes in this way. So the big crown is this part. And that's the reason why you want to cut it back quite hard, so you can see what's growing in there and make sure that you save the right part. Now, at some point, to make an omelette, you've got to crack a few eggs. To save a plant, you've got to get a spade in there and start digging. So here we go. Now that is a beautiful first plant. 1, 2, 3 stalks. As you work through this process, inevitably there'll be a stem that gets snapped, or a root that gets snapped, or a piece that you can't quite make best use of. Don't beat yourself up. If you're able to dig it up and get some successful divisions, get a large clump for next year, give some plants away, if there's a few pieces you discard, that's just fine. That's okay. So by taking off those side growth shoots, I'm able to really focus on this large clump. I know that this clump is going to become my A-grade plant that I want to take through the winter. And it's a little bit more manageable now. It's not quite so wieldy. And I want to make the point that when you dig into perennials like this, you really want to dig in straight down. You might see me on occasions go in at a bit of an angle. Chances are I've already gone in straight down to cut the roots and get a nice big root ball. Here I'm just cutting back the head so I can see clearer what it is that I'm digging up. And also, it helps you get a good grip of the root ball that can be quite substantial. And there it is. This is the root mass that will be kept on the dry side through the winter in the greenhouse, and it'll be ready for growth next year. Digging up the plant you want to save is only half the challenge. The next thing is to find a good size pot that matches the size of the clump you've dug up. Now I always use a bit of garden soil here. You can use a potting mix. I do find it tends to hold water in the winter, or it can do, or it goes bone dry, whereas the soil's a bit more forgiving. So 3 or 4 half spades in the bottom gives it a bit of weight so it doesn't tip over. Give it a little bit of a shake and level it out. And then you can carefully add your root ball to that pot. Here you see we've got lots of fibrous roots. It's not too big, it's not too small. Make sure that you push it down so that those roots are in contact with that soil that you put in the bottom of the pot. Sometimes it's easy to get a bit of an air gap. Now, you have to remember that this is overwintering for me in my garden, in my greenhouse. Nobody else is going to use this. So if I'm happy with it, it's done. It's exactly how it should be. Take a little time to put some soil around the top to fill in the voids and give it a little bit of a shake. Just a word from prior experience. You might spend your time digging up and potting on, and then only move a few of your plants to the greenhouse and forget that there's some still in the garden. Frost comes, they get zapped, so make sure that whatever you dig up, you do move it that day into a greenhouse. Now I ended up with more divisions than I was expecting. So we've got 4 or 5 different divisions here, and rather than putting them all in separate pots, I use a larger pot and I can put 3 or more plants in one container. I've done this many times and it works very well. In this pot I'm going to put in 3 and then carefully backfill around it, give it a shake just as I did before. And that means that next spring, these will easily separate. I can pot them on and they'll root out nicely. Remember, we're just overwintering. Thank you for watching Planted. Tell your friends, tell your family. I find these videos very enjoyable. And if you get to the end, you get to watch the video that will come out next week first because you subscribed. Thank you.